Of the 10 jobs that have opened up in the NFL for the head coaching position, 8 of them have been filled. Some are better than others. So in this video, we are going to be ranking them from worst to best. Hit the like and subscribe button if you're new and do go on to enjoy. Let's hop into it. And we are going to begin at number 8 with the Cleveland Browns hiring Todd Monken. So I want to make one thing clear. I don't think Todd Monken is a bad offensive mind. I think if you look back at his track record, you would see that typically players and quarterbacks that play under Monken have really good years when he's around. So this is sort of a bit of a recap of some of the stuff he's done in recent years. He was with Jack Del Rio in Jacksonville as a receivers coach. Then he went to Oklahoma State, and then he went to Southern Miss, and he took a team that was 0-12. He won 1 game the next year. Then I think he won 3. And then his last year, he was a 9-win football team. So he got Southern Miss back on track. He then went to Tampa Bay to be the offensive coordinator, which that was when he was with Jameis Winston. So this is Jameis Winston's stats here. You can see in 2016 when Monken took over, his numbers got slightly better from his rookie year. The next year he was okay. Then he got a little bit worse the next year in 2018. However, his big breakout year, if you want to say breakout year, you could say it, was that 2019 season when he had 5,000 yards and 33 touchdowns. That was the year that we saw Todd Monken go over to Cleveland to be the offensive coordinator with Freddie Kitchens, which Baker had a good year in 2019, but you also have to throw into the fact that Freddie Kitchens was the offensive coordinator. He was kind of the one running the show there, and there was a lot of dispute between Monken and him, so it didn't really work out early in Cleveland. He went to Georgia with Stetson Bennett and all those guys, had some success in 2020, 2021, 2022. And then obviously most recently with Lamar Jackson, Lamar's won an MVP. He's playing at his, career best. So Monken has been around the game for a long time. He's been coaching football since 1989 as a grad assistant at Grand Valley State. So he's seen a lot of things. He knows what he's doing. This is not a guy that doesn't lack the experience of what you would want. I know one of the other candidates for this position was the passing game coordinator from the Rams, who doesn't have a ton of experience. So they went with a bit more of the experienced option in Todd Monken, which the reason why he's at my number 8, this hiring just feels, let's be honest, not that inspired. For an organization that did a really inspiring thing when they brought in Kevin Stefanski, a move that a lot of people liked and it worked out for a couple years, you move off of him, somebody who I think is a really good head coach, and we'll talk about him here in a second, to go to a guy that has never been an NFL head coach and has always just kind of been a solid offensive coordinator or a solid quarterback whisperer, but never like the Sean McVays of the world or the Mike McDonalds of the world, etc., etc. And to me, in the NFL, if you want to be a team that can take that next step, you need one of these younger or really innovative guys. And I just don't really know if Monken is the super innovative, guy out there. I think he's a great offensive mind. I believe he could get the Browns on track with their offensive quarterback play, but there's some flaws to this one. Obviously, we've heard that Schwartz, their defensive coordinator, is not going to be returning, so that adds a little bit of a wrinkle here. I don't know. I don't absolutely hate the hire. I just feel like it's not the most inspired hire that I've seen in this cycle or in cycles in the past, which to me, I felt like the Browns needed to make a very aggressive sort of, reaching for the stars type of hire, like Sean McVay was for the LA Rams, like Kyle Shanahan was for the Niners, like Mike McDonald was for the Ravens, and I don't feel like the Browns did that. Moving over to number 7, let's talk about Joe Brady. So this one is weird, right? Because Joe Brady's been on the team for multiple years, and he's done a decent job the past couple years. If we look at his resume, you could see that he's actually one of the more younger coaches out there. He actually started as a linebacker. I don't know if he was playing or what was going on there, but with William & Mary, grad assistant for Penn State. Then he went to the NFL as an offensive assistant with the New Orleans Saints. Had his big breakout year. This is, of course, the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson season where he was essentially the passing game coordinator. He felt like he was a lot of the OC on that year. He then went to Carolina, had a couple down years with them. Then he went to Buffalo, and with Josh Allen, he's been the guy. So he has a ton of experience with Josh Allen, and his offenses have been good, right? I would say that there's been a lot of good things that Joe Brady has done, but there's also been a lot of negative things that Joe Brady has done as well. This offense at times has felt a little bit bogged down, and you're talking about a guy that doesn't have a ton of experience. He's only been coaching in the NFL for less than 10 years, and he's never been a head coach ever. Right now, I do think this is a pretty good opportunity for him to, take that big step forward because he's used to the guys in the building. He knows Josh Allen. He knows the ownership. He knows probably every coach he's going to be working with. So it's not like it's going to be a big jump for him. Like, it's not like Joe Brady's going from being the offensive coordinator for Buffalo and having only a few years as being an OC to then go into like the Cleveland Browns or something like that and having to rebuild that roster. It's not really the case of what he's going to have to do. This hire to me is just another one of these hires that it doesn't feel like an inspiring hire. It doesn't feel like they really went out of the box with this one. In fact, they didn't go out of the box. They stayed within house. And I don't know, for me, I just would have rather them kept their head coach that was bringing them a ton of success. Like, say what you want about Sean McDermott, but before Sean McDermott was the Bills head coach, that team was a shit show. Ever since McDermott's been there, they've been a playoff contender, a championship contender every single season. And it just felt like this year he was the scapegoat, despite the fact that it wasn't his fault the team lost in the playoffs. It was the fault of his quarterback and Joe Brady. So bringing in Joe Brady to be the head coach, it just feels like you're going to get the exact same thing from Buffalo. And I'm worried it's probably just going to be a little bit worse. Because I do believe Sean McDermott is a good defensive mind, and you lose him, and now you're just going to be having to recycle defensive coordinators. It just, to me, is a bit of a curious one. Now, Brady, I give the benefit of the doubt a little bit over Todd Monken because he is very young. He's only 36 years old, and he has shown progression and getting better and better. So as he has times to develop with Josh Allen, he might be able to develop a bit more, take a bit more control, get some other outside voices too with maybe his own offensive coordinator. And I think this could end up being a good hire. It's just, for me, as of right now, I'm not like the biggest fan of this one. I don't hate it. I definitely don't like it. I definitely don't love it. I would have went a different direction if I was the Buffalo Bills. Moving over to number 6, let's talk about Mike McCarthy going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So let me get this out of the way. I'm very happy for Mike McCarthy. I know that he's a Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania guy, and so watching him at that event or watching him at the press conference tearing up because he loves his team so much, I really do like that stuff, man. And I could tell you this as a fan of the Dallas Cowboys, who obviously had a bit of success there with Mike McCarthy. I don't think McCarthy's a bad football coach. In fact, I think he's an okay to really solid football coach. But this is my big issue with it. The Steelers have just been okay for many, many years now. But I will give Mike McCarthy a ton of credit. He's been in the league for many years. Since 1993, he has been in the NFL, never left it, has been a head coach since 2006. And has done a lot of really good things. You can see his resume here. I mean, obviously won the Super Bowl in 2010, had multiple 10-plus playoff seasons for multiple years there, and then with the Dallas Cowboys, brought them to 3 straight 12-win seasons. And even in that 2024 season, they were a 7-win team despite the fact they had injuries flooded across the roster. Now, of course, the big caveat you have to throw in here with the Mike McCarthy thing is that he's always been attached to excellent quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott, 2 really good football players. Rodgers, a future Hall of Famer. Dak Prescott probably will be in the Ring of Honor for the Dallas Cowboys. Like, these are 2 excellent quarterbacks that have always been able to elevate their game. Now, I will say, again, I don't hate the McCarthy hire because he's been there, he's done that, and I feel like he's just going to continue what Mike Tomlin was doing, which was getting this team into the playoffs, giving them a chance every single season. But at the same time, that's a good thing, and it's also a bad thing, because I personally believe that this Steelers team needs to be bad for a year or two, right? And it's not like he's heading into a situation in Pittsburgh where he knows who his quarterback is going to be. Maybe he gets, reignited with Aaron Rodgers for another season. It's not going to do anything for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're just going to be a wild card team or probably miss the playoffs. And you obviously know that McCarthy wants to attach himself in Pittsburgh with a young, hotshot quarterback to see if he can extend his time as a head coach with the team and attach himself to that young quarterback. I don't know. This is a interesting hire to me. I just kind of feel like if you were going to bring in McCarthy, like, why not just keep Tomlin? Like, Tomlin had been with the team for multiple years, good culture guy. If McCarthy was your top pick, why not just go with Mike Tomlin for another season? I know that wouldn't have been inspiring, but this is another one of these hires that to me wasn't very inspiring, right? It's a good hire because he's a good ball coach, and he'll get this team to a point where they can stay competitive. I mean, look at his tenure in both Green Bay and Dallas. He is able to build good football teams, good enough football teams to win 12-plus games. But it's not like Pittsburgh's been lacking wins. They can win football games. Their issue is they lack winning football games when it matters most. And what happened with the Dallas Cowboys for several years there, he struggled to win the games when they mattered most. He got bullied and outplayed every single time. So I'm hoping that maybe this, another year off, kind of invigorating his coaching spirit, reworking his playbook and things like that. I'm hoping it brings in a good OC, good DC, all those guys. I hope it works out. But I got to be honest with you, I just feel like the Steelers are going to be in the exact same situation they've been in for the past 5 years. Unless he goes out there and really addresses that quarterback position with a high-flying quarterback maybe in 2027. Moving over to number 5, I have Jeff Hafley going to the Miami Dolphins. So it feels like the Miami Dolphins decided to just go completely on the other side of the pendulum, which is weird because they did the exact same thing when they got rid of Flores. They brought in McDaniels, Flores, hard-nosed, defensive mind, Mike McDaniel, chill, vape, offensive-minded guy. Now you're going to Jeff Hafley, who's, again, more of that hard-nosed, defensive-oriented guy. So it just feels like Miami is just going through the spin cycle again. And look, I like Jeff Hafley a lot. I think there's a lot to like about Hafley. There's a lot to like on his resume. You can see he's been in college for multiple seasons as a defensive assistant back at Albany, going to Pitt as a defensive assistant, the DB's coach, going to Tampa Bay as the DB coach there too. Same with Cleveland, same with San Francisco. Going to Ohio State for a season, having some success there. Then going to be the head coach at Boston College, which we'll look at here in a second. And in these past 2 years has really turned around that Green Bay defense, and he's done a hell of a job there. Now, when you go to Boston College, you can see these are the years of Jeff Hafley, right? The first year, 6-5. Second year, 6-6. Third year, 3-9. Last year, 7-6, did win in the bowl game. Now, obviously, Boston College is not one of these high-level programs. They're not a Texas, an Ohio State, a Georgia, Bama, Ole Miss, you name this, Michigan, right? They're not one of those teams. But it felt like he was pretty just average and sometimes below average when he was the head coach at Boston College. Now, I will give him his flowers. He was excellent with the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, the wheels kind of fell off towards the back end of the season with the Packers because their defense just got smothered with injuries. Micah Parsons, the secondary wasn't great. Things were kind of out of his control, but he did do a lot of really good things with that Packers defense. And I do believe he's a really smart coach, a really smart defensive mind. And I think if he gets his personnel on the defensive side of things, he can put together a really good defense in Miami. There's already a couple pieces to like there in Miami that you could see working out for a Jeff Hafley defense, right? A Chop Robinson playing sort of that Micah Parsons role. We can see what Kenneth Grant can develop a tad bit. They got some guys in the secondary that you like too. So there's some pieces to work with there. Now he's going to have to do a lot of work to get that defense up to code. So hopefully the Dolphins have some patience with him to build up his staff, to build up that defense. And, maybe it might take 2 to 3 years. I don't hate the hire. It is definitely more of an inspired hire than everyone we've talked about below this. But it's also like he doesn't have a ton of experience as a head coach, and the experience he does have, it's not that great. And he's only been a defensive coordinator for 2 seasons, right? He's been a position coach, a DB's coach for most of his career. Then he went to Ohio State to become the co-defensive coordinator before jumping to head coach and then jumping to defensive coordinator. All of his experience as a head coach in DC is within the past 5 years. And we've seen some mixed results, especially at his time in Boston College. So I don't know how to feel about this one. I definitely don't hate it. I definitely believe that he can do a good job in Miami. He's just got to find the right offensive coordinator. And that is the tough thing about being a defensive-minded head coach. Because if you are a defensive-minded head coach, or let's say like a Dan Campbell, who's more of the culture team guy, the second you bring in a good offensive mind, he's just going to get pulled away from you within 1 or 2 coaching cycles. So if you're Hafley, you bring in a really smart offensive coordinator, he does a hell of a job, your team gets into the playoffs and they lose in the divisional round or something like that, you're going to see that offensive coordinator get pulled from your team to be elevated somewhere else, and then you have to kind of spin the wheels again on a different offensive mind. It's the same thing that happens with the Eagles and Nick Sirianni. It's the same thing that has happened with Todd Bowles. Same thing that has happened with a lot of these high-level teams. Sean McVay. I mean, Sean McVay's the offensive mind, but he's had to do it with defensive coordinators, which are a bit easier to replace, but kind of the same thought process. So I don't know. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I kind of would have liked to have seen them maybe stick with an offensive mind. Somebody that is just a bit more of a culture guy. Like, I kind of think Clint Kubiak could be, but that's just my opinion. Next up at number 4, I have the Tennessee Titans taking Robert Saleh. So this one is really interesting because, look, I've always thought Robert Saleh was a good football coach. Even when he was with the Jets and had a couple really down years, I always felt like he was doing a really solid job building that team. There was just pressure from the fan base, pressure from ownership to get that quarterback position right, and it never worked out for him. But this is his resume. Obviously, he has been in the game since 2002, defensive assistant, then jumped to the NFL in 2005. intern quality control linebackers, always been around the defense, got elevated from quality control to linebackers coach, then became the DC in San Francisco in 2017 to 2020, had a ton of success then, obviously made the championship run. The defenses were always really solid. Like, they did a really good job with that defense. He gets elevated to head coach in New York, and then obviously with the New York Jets, you can see never really put it together. 4-13, 7-10, 7-10, 2-3, got fired after week 5. But then he went back to San Francisco and then became the defensive coordinator again this season. And again, you've seen this defense be as good as it can be despite not having Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. I think Robert Saleh is a fantastic defensive mind. I think he is such a good defensive coach, and he's also really good for culture. I think he's a really good fit for Tennessee as well. The good news is he already has his quarterback, and that's why I like this hire a lot. See, I would not have liked Robert Saleh going to Cleveland because it just would have felt like the exact same thing in New York. But he's now going to a team that has pieces defensively. Cedric Gray, Vondre Sweat, Jeffrey Simmons. Like, there's some things to work with over there. It's not a complete shit show over there. But on the offensive end, he has his quarterback. So now all he has to do is give him some weapons, build up the O-line, build up his defense. Within 2 to 3 seasons, if they have patience with him as he develops his roster, I think Saleh could be a fantastic hire because he's one of the best defensive minds out there. We've seen that in San Francisco. We've seen that with the New York Jets. I mean, that Jets offense was abysmal, but their defense had pieces and they were really good. I mean, we saw this year, like, the turnaround from the 2023 Jets defense to the 2025 Jets defense with Aaron Glenn. And Aaron Glenn, I mean, he's got some work to do on that side. But Saleh always had good defenses, and he's going to build a good defense in Tennessee. The question again is the Jeff Hafley concern. Are you going to be able to find that OC, and are you able to keep them around long enough to see the turnaround? We'll have to wait and see on that one. I really do like this hire, though. I think it's really nice to build up a good culture guy who can build a great defense, pair him up with a young quarterback that we know is good, and see what magic can happen there. Hopefully Tennessee has patience with him because I think it might be a bit of a slow start. I think maybe his first year they win 5 to 7 games. But I think by year 2 and 3, we can start to see them really start to put the pieces together. So I like this hire quite a bit. Moving over to number 3, we have John Harbaugh going to the New York Giants. So obviously, I don't really have to go through the history of John Harbaugh. It's pretty well documented, but just in case, I'll go ahead and show you guys. You can see it doesn't even fit on my screen. He started all the way back in 1984 with Western Michigan, then went to Cincinnati as a special teams coordinator, then went all the way to Philadelphia in 1998, 36 years old, special teams coordinator, DB coach in Philadelphia, then became the head coach in Baltimore. And since 2008, he has been the guy for, 17, 18 years. It's ridiculous. And you can see he's had a ton of success with this Ravens franchise. Obviously won the Super Bowl back in 2012, has been to the playoffs basically almost every single year. I mean, he's missed a couple of times here and there, but most part has made these deep playoff runs. He's always done a good job of having good quarterback play, Joe Flacco, and then of course Lamar Jackson. He's done the things necessary. The reason why he's not my number 1, there are questions with Harbaugh, right? He is kind of known as being the culture guy, but there have been some times where guys have not seen eye to eye within Baltimore, right? It happened early in his tenure, and it's happened fairly late in his tenure too. He's also not an offensive-minded guy, nor a defensive-minded guy, so again, he's going to be building the culture and handling the games, but we've seen ever since really like 2019, 2020, his handling of high-pressure moments in big-time games hasn't been great. Now, I think he's a really good coach at building his roster, especially if he gets a say in how he wants to put his roster together. I think he has a good vision for what the modern NFL is. So I do believe with the New York Giants, they're going to be able to put together a really good roster. What's going to be important for them is just getting the OC and DC hires correct. And if they do so, and if he can keep that culture right, which I think he can do, I think this could be a home run hire. But again, in Baltimore, it felt like as the years went on, his performance as the manager of the game got a little bit worse and worse. And he just never had the playoff success later with Lamar Jackson specifically that you'd want to see, especially with how talented those teams were. So I like the hire of Harbaugh, obviously a well-tenured guy, somebody that has seen a ton of success, won a freaking Super Bowl, has been good for Baltimore. I'm a little bit like skeptical about it in terms of like, will this be able to continue to transfer over to New York, who, by the way, have done similar things as well. Let's not forget what happened with Tom Coughlin, where he left his team, went to New York, had a lot of success there. So we'll see if Harbaugh can do it. Harbaugh is a little bit older. He's 63, might be 64 at this point. I'm not too sure. But I still feel like he's a young looking 64-year-old. Like, he's still got plenty of time in him. So decent hire. I don't hate it. I wouldn't say I love it, but I definitely like the hire for sure. Moving over to number 2, let's talk about Kevin Stefanski going to the Atlanta Falcons. So we talked a little bit earlier about Kevin Stefanski moving on from the Cleveland Browns. And look, I love the Stefanski hire to Atlanta. One thing that you can for sure say about Kevin Stefanski, at the bare minimum, Bijan Robinson's going to absolutely feast in this offense. Like, he's going to be unbelievable, because when you go back to his career, he's been obviously in the NFL for multiple years, really just between these two teams, Minnesota and Cleveland. But he worked his way up in Minnesota from an assistant to an assistant quarterbacks coach to the tight ends coach to running backs to quarterbacks, and then became the OC in 2019, where the Minnesota Vikings had a lot of success. He then gets promoted to Cleveland Browns head coach. And look, despite the fact the Browns never got over the hump, he had success with that team, right? 11 wins in his first year, 8-9 the second year, 11 wins in 2023. The past 2 years, though, the team really soured. But I really don't feel like you can put a ton of the blame on Stefanski. I think ownership in that team is a complete disaster. I think that there's questions with the GMs. I think there's questions with the plan at quarterback. They've had top 10 picks the past 2 years, and they have not been able to get a quarterback. Now, it's not really their fault. The 2024 quarterback class was Cam Ward and friends. This year, it's Fernando Mendoza and friends. Last year, or the year prior, wasn't really good that much either. So it has been kind of tough for them to land that quarterback, and they've never just been in a great spot to get there. But they really messed up with the Deshaun Watson situation, right? The Deshaun Watson situation completely ruined everything for Cleveland. Despite the fact they had some good things going with Baker, and Baker was attached with Stefanski, and that relationship did not really work out, and then he got moved. They're still beefing, by the way, which is crazy. But yeah, I like this hire, though, because he's going to go to a situation in Atlanta where his offense has a premier talent at running back, a premier talent at receiver, a solid offensive line. If they bring back Kyle Pitts, a really good tight end that I think could have a really good season in Stefanski's system. And he also has some options at quarterback. Obviously, he's going to be obviously brought back to Kirk Cousins if he stays in Atlanta. But Kirk saw a lot of success with the Minnesota Vikings. I think he could have some success if he is the guy next year with Kevin Stefanski. And if not, I'm interested to see what Michael Penix looks like if he's healthy with Stefanski, right? I think if I am the Falcons, I might let those two try and figure out, between the two, who's going to be the quarterback, really work it out with the offseason of competition. Obviously, I think Penix would get the benefit of the doubt and maybe be the starter. If it doesn't work out, then I think they might be a team that's super aggressive in trying to trade up and get a new quarterback in 2027 or 2028. So I like this hire a lot. I think Bijan's going to be unbelievable with this team. And we've always seen Stefanski have good defenses. He knows how to hire good defensive coordinators. So yeah, I think that this will be a good hire for the Falcons. I think he's a smart offensive mind that, frankly, just was never given a good deck of cards in Cleveland. But then at number 1, I have Jesse Minter going to the Baltimore Ravens. So I don't think you really have to overcomplicate this one. He was a Baltimore Ravens DB and defensive assistant for multiple seasons, had some success in that position, went on to college at Vanderbilt in Michigan, had some great years there, then went back to the NFL as a Chargers DC and was incredible. You can see this is his tenure right here. Has been in the game since 2006, really got to the NFL in 2017, has worked his way up, and obviously has been around the Harbaughs his whole career. So on one hand, you could say like, yeah, you're just kind of bringing in a Harbaugh disciple. You're just going to get more of the same. I think that's true, but I also feel like that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Harbaugh brought the Ravens a ton of success, and now you get somebody who's a little bit younger. He's only in his 40s. He's going to be hungry to prove himself as a head coach, so that could definitely work out. He's going to bring in his own offensive minds. He's going to bring in his own coaching staff, and I just feel like he's a good fit for Baltimore, right? It was such a simple hire, too. Like, I feel like this was the guy the whole way, and I like the hire. I like the hire because I think he can be better than what Harbaugh was later in his tenure. Now, he's going to have a lot to live up to be better than Harbaugh career-wise with Baltimore, but this does feel like a really seamless transition from one hand to the other hand. We talked about it with Joe Brady and Sean McDermott, how that should be a seamless transition, except I wasn't a big fan of that one because I didn't love Brady as a head coach. I like Minter a lot as a head coach. I think he has the makeup of it. Seems like a good guy, good culture fit. He fits into Baltimore, obviously, has been in the organization, has been around the players. This should be a really seamless transition. And I think he's just going to take that Baltimore defense that has a ton of talent and completely overhaul it from, what Zachary Orr did, which was up and down. I think the Baltimore Ravens defense next year can be legit with Jesse Minter, with all the talent on that side of the field. And he gets to kind of rework that offense, an offense that doesn't really need a ton of reworking because they have Lamar Jackson, they have Derrick Henry, they have Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews and some decent offensive linemen, right? Just plug and fill a couple holes here and there. Minter could legitimately be somebody that steps in year one and leads a team to a deep playoff run. Like, that's the type of coach that I think he is, but it's also the type of situation he's heading into, right? This is a very favorable job. And unlike Joe Brady, who has a lot of holes to fill in Buffalo, it's not like Baltimore has a ton of holes. You need a guard. You might need a few pieces defensively. Maybe you want a wide receiver too next to Zay Flowers. But, that's really it. This is a really good Ravens football team. And I think Minter just grabs the baton and then takes off sprinting and lets Harbaugh rest in New York a little bit. So I like this hire quite a bit. I think it makes the most sense. He is just such a seamless, it's like a puzzle piece where it's just like it's missing that one piece. And Minter just pop him right in there and he finishes the puzzle. So yeah, guys, let me know in the comment section below. By the way, we still have 2 more hires that have not been announced yet. Arizona is still looking for a coach. Las Vegas is looking for a coach. I've heard Las Vegas is eyeing Clint Kubiak, which I think could check some boxes. I think he would probably be around the 5 to 4 range in my list. And then when it comes to Arizona, I have no clue who they're looking for. I mean, it could be Chris Shula. I think that would check a couple boxes. It could be Vance Joseph. Maybe they're looking for an offensive mind. I don't really know, but yeah, we'll keep a tabs on those. And if you want my thoughts on those, I'll definitely post something in my community tab when they do get the official hires done with. So you guys let me know in the comment section below. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? And I love you guys. Peace.